Sensation and perception are two processes that work together on a daily basis, but in fact are not the same. They do have some similarities. The best example of this would be Oliver Sacks. He was a man that couldn't recognize people's faces very easily. As a matter of fact, he couldn't even recognize his own when he looked into the mirror. He has a disorder known as prosopagnosia, a disorder that impairs your ability to recognize a face. His sensation process worked just fine. His problem was his perception of those faces. Like I stated before, sensation and perception work together on a daily basis. One process gets the information, which is sensation, and another goes deeper into it and finds the meaning behind it, which is perception. Sensation is the bottom-up process by which our senses receive and relay outside stimuli. The bottom-up process is basically the process of trying to comprehend something or trying to find out what the thing that you are looking at actually is. Like, what is the physical structure that makes up that thing? By looking at its physical features, the angles, curves, lines, etc. Anything that can show the physical structure of something. In the example I stated before, it would be the face that Sachs is trying to recognize. Perception is the top-down way our brain organizes and interprets information. Top-down process meaning the process of interpreting what you see from your senses. Basically, top-down processing is giving what you see meaning, like the faces I mentioned before, to a person and or identity. Selective attention is the focusing of conscious awareness on a particular stimulus. By an estimate, all of your 5 senses take in about 11 million bits of information in a matter of only 1 second, but of these, you can only consciously process about 40. For example, whenever you read a book, you never realize that your nose is in the way since you're blocking it out with your mind. And right now, if you watching this video, you don't realize that your feet are pressing against the bottom of your shoes. As I am saying this, you may go to check if these are true. Your attention might have changed. You are giving your devoted attention towards something, and when you do so, you may not be able to do this for other things at the same time. Another example of selective attention, known as the cocktail party effect, is your ability to only hear and comprehend one voice over many. For example, in a room full of many who are constantly talking to one another, you may still talk to one person and block out the other conversations. This can also apply to listening music. You can't give your full attention towards somebody and listen to them while also listening to music from an earbud from another ear. Your brain blocks out one, and therefore selective attention goes into place.
Okay, so there was a series of experiments conducted to test the stimuli in our brain. One was called intentional blindness. It was tested 2 times in the year of 1979 and 1983. This was conducted by Eric Neiser, Robert Becklin, and Daniel Carvone. So the intentional blindness experiment was basically have the volunteers press a key every time they saw a black-shirted player toss the ball. But they were superimposed with white players, so they had to focus very hard on it. And so when they did that, they didn't notice that in the middle of the video that they were watching, a girl with an umbrella, a young girl, was sauntering across the screen, and so when they rewatched the video, they were very shocked, and the reason this happened was because all their focus was on the players. They didn't notice any of their surroundings because we can only give so much attention from our brain at a time, because if it's called divided attention for a reason, because your attention is divided, it's less accurate. You won't be able to notice as much. And there was another type of blindness where people didn't seem to notice change. Like, for example, they conducted an experiment where there was a man asking for directions, and then these 2 workers passed by with a painting through them. The guy was completely replaced, and the man he was asking for the directions from didn't notice at all. This was called change blindness. Change blindness, because he didn't fully pay attention, you could say. And let's see, there was another experiment also by a Swedish research team, Peter Johansson and his colleagues. So they gave a photo to two volunteers and let them look at the 2 photos for 2 to 5 seconds. So they asked which one photo was the most attractive, and a research team member switched the photos out. So when they switched the photos out, they asked why they found them attractive. A lot of people, none of the people noticed, and only 13% could explain as to why. They continued to explain why they preferred the rejected photo over the one they chose, even though they didn't notice. And then they asked the volunteers if this experiment was conducted, if they would notice. And 84% of them said that they would. They insisted, actually. And those 84% was called, choice blindness. Now, there was also one more experiment that was conducted. It determined our absolute threshold. So, a German scientist and philosopher, Gustav Fechner, studied our awareness, right? So, he was, basically, he was testing our absolute awareness. We can tell when a bee wing touches our cheek, or if 30 miles away there's a candle lit in complete darkness when we're on top of a mountain. We can smell a single drop of perfume in a three-room apartment, and yeah, so we can smell. We have so basically, the definition of these of absolute threshold is the minimum stimulation necessary to detect a particular light, sounds, pressure, taste, or 50 or order. 50% of the time, it's very effective, and it can vary with an age. So these are ways our brain is conducted, how our stimuli, how we notice things, because all these experiments prove that most of them, not the last one, prove that our attention, when it's divided, it's less effective. So you can say you multitask, but multitasking is, you can do it, but it's not as good as if you just focus, like doing your math homework and like doing a project at the same time. You can't do that. You can say you can. You can watch TV and do your math homework at the same time. That's a better example, actually. And 50% of your brain will be focusing on the TV, and 50% on the math homework. So you're more likely to screw up on the math homework because 50% of your brain, your attention span is gone. So basically, that's what these experiments are telling us, and yeah.
Okay, so sensory adaptation is our diminishing sensitivity to an unchanging stimulus. So if we go into a room and it smells like pizza, then after a while you're gonna stop noticing the smell of the pizza. And so this is also the reason why people who smell bad don't know that they smell bad. Yeah, and our brain does this. It like blocks out the unimportant stuff and it focuses on the important stuff. So we can focus on important stuff. And then TV, like directors, people, they do this when they're making movies and shows to direct people's attention to certain difference threshold is the minimum difference a person can detect between any two stimuli. So for example, if you're holding a 10-pound object and someone puts another 1-pound object on it, then you're obviously going to feel a difference. But if you're holding a 100-pound object and they add a 1-pound object on it, then you're not going to feel a difference. Or if you do, you'll like barely feel it. So, and then before, people thought that it was based on amount, and then Ernst Weber came up with Weber's law, basically stating that it's not about how much, it's about proportion. So to detect the difference between light, there would need to be an 8% difference. To detect the difference between weight, it would need to be a 2% difference. And for sound frequency, it would need to be a 0.3 difference, or a 0.3% difference. So if you're holding a 50-pound object, or if you're holding a 100-pound object, then for you to feel a difference, someone would need to add 2 pounds onto it.
So, psychophysics, that's the study of the correlation between the physical characteristics of stimuli and our psychological experience of them. Over time, we've learned about thresholds, such as absolute thresholds, which is the minimum stimulation needed to detect a particular stimulus about 50% of the time, and difference thresholds, which my boy Jakob will talk about later. An absolute threshold is essentially how faint a stimuli can be while still being able to be noticed half the time. The signal detection theory states how and when we detect the presence of a faint stimulus amid background stimulation. It states that detection of stimuli depends on a person's experiences, expectations, motivation, and alertness. Subliminal stimulation, which is stimulation below someone's absolute threshold, can be sensed unconsciously and can sometimes have an actual effect on us. To experiment this correlation, a study in 1992 subliminally flashed positive or negative images before showing participants pictures of people. The participants believed that the people looked nicer if their image was followed by subliminal positive images rather than negative images. Economically, subliminal stimulation has been used to prime people, which means unconsciously activating certain associations to direct a person's response. For example, marketing firms will try to make a thirst-quenching beverages ad seem more appealing by subliminally placing the word thirst in the ad. Although in the end, these marketing ploys were not found to be very effective.